So on social media, I saw on Mastodon, I saw a link to a shader of a game which was
Hmm.
actually very small. It was a shader um, code of maybe, yeah, it was like this, like just it was not even that big, and it was so smooth, and it actually ran in VR with a super high
Hmm.
resolution. I was amazed, and then I was thinking, hey, I can imagine that at some point there are, editors, perhaps like game editors, drag drop, where you can just put something together, and then it would work pretty nice, perhaps in VR and in 3D. And then you showed me this article, the shaders article, this link in the chat.
Yes. So it's the link there. Basically, it's part of. It's less of an article than a series of notes. So on my PIM, on my personal information management,
Hmm.
which is a wiki, which is open source, and I self-host,
Hmm.
which is also quickly. It's a Linux desktop using KDE. And using all open source tool, the Firefox browser. And here I'm using my wiki that I host on my website, which also, for the anecdote, is the same website where we're meeting now using Jitsi, which is also open source, which means we can tinker in all this. So I have notes about a lot of things like self-hosting AI, so that no matter what you think about it, you can access the code and whatnot. So whenever I discover or learn about a topic, I route some notes in my wiki, in my PIM. And as you can see also from the timeline, in 2016, I started to jot some notes about it because I think when you do 3D on the web and elsewhere, shaders are pretty powerful. What's a little bit tricky, and that's why I can recommend this. It's another way to program and thus to think, where instead of going linearly, line by line, like I want a primitive and whatnot, here you'd say here this bunch of pixels should be blue. So it's a totally different way to do this. And what it helped me in the past is called the Book of Shaders, because it has some exercises live, like it explains quite a bit, but then you were supposed to do it, to do the exercise. And there is a live editor, so that if here that I can even like change some of the value interactively, and you can see the result on the right changing. So it's I think it's a great way to learn about it. And you can change, of course, more interestingly, the code. But yeah, everything there is safe. And if you mess up, you refresh. So I can highly recommend it. And yeah, I think there is a lot to do. But to go back to your point, and including A-Frame, which is the framework both of us uses, which in my opinion is the proof that it's a good framework, is that you can have high-level primitives like a box, a cube rather. I don't even remember. Every time I do the mistake due to the old ways. A box, yes. So very high level, but then I think if you, yeah, the dark search doesn't work anymore, but you can go all the way to shaders and thus have something. Oh, maybe it's too old. Oh, yeah, too old version. All that is too old. I'll check and eventually update it. Um, but yeah, I think it's a quite powerful technique. And with the change now in 3GS, which is also the framework that we use because we use a frame called TSL. So another shading language that
TSL.
apparently, yes, 3GS
T.
shading language.
Oh, it's something related to 3GS. Okay.
Yes, yes. I'll stop screen sharing. But the idea being like GSLS, um, it is a powerful shading language, but it requires quite a new or different way to pipe things together. Let's say the shader and then the primitive fragment shader or pigment shader. uh, pixel shader. Whereas now with TSL, so it's a bit more specific to 3GS. So I don't think you can use them with, for example, Babylon GS, like other web-based framework. But it means you can go back and forth in a way that is more intuitive for a lot of people. So I think that that could be an interesting exploration to consider together, like how to deform a mesh, would you change the color of the mesh, and this kind of thing that could be done without shading, but that would be very costly, usually inefficient, and then don't look as good as you say. Let's say the scale free, basically, or canoid that even in huge size still looks very good.
Nice. That is really cool. And so the shaders are also open source. Basically, there's like um, zero lock in there. Like if you have a shader, does it have a long lifetime?
So there is a cultural aspect to it that a lot of actually I don't know if you knew that, but um, Mr. Doob that wrote 3GS comes
Hmm.
from the demo scene.
Hmm.
So basically, write short programs that are beautiful and nothing else. Like they don't have a meaning beside being beautiful. And in the demo scene, there are some live coding practices where you write the code and then people, the audience, see it change live. Um, and for this, he wrote an editor and then he started to develop 3GS for live coding and demo scene. And thus starting to write also shaders because that's, as you highlighted initially, that's a great way to have something that is both compact, few lines of code, and then is visually stunning. So 3GS is also the result, even before TSL, of a need for being able to do code live for an audience and have a beautiful result. So yeah, and in that culture, in that scene, you do share everything you do because the code itself is beautiful. The
Hmm.
result of the code too, but because it's so compact and you can change so little to have such a big impact, it is also part of a way. But you do have a little bit of lock-in because, for example, TSL works only on 3GS, whereas TSLS works. It's a shading language for anything on WebGL, as far as I know. So any framework on the web with WebGL will accept this kind of shaders. And yeah, the shader toys that you shared is about sharing good shaders or impressive ones. So usually there is no luck in there.
That's really cool. That is really cool. I also, I think I have one demo somewhere. I don't have it here right now, but basically, um, with XR fragments, I basically had like a 3D model which had a plane, basically in Blender, created a plane, and on it I put an SRC attribute, like in HTML, and I basically pointed it to a GLSL file, a URL, and that was a really cool way to sort of project a shader onto a mesh. And I could see that in certain cases it's not really needed. You don't need shaders, but
Mhm.
I can definitely, yeah, especially with these demos, what you were talking about, I can really imagine that certain things can only be done with these shaders, performance wise.
Yeah, it's indeed. Honestly, I would say don't do shaders unless you have to or you want to,
Right.
because it's a different way to think. Let's say I'm manipulating primitive, but for deformations, for shading itself, like how light is going to bounce on the surface of your model, it that's the way to do it. Like it makes sense. But yeah, it requires a little bit of a different way to think. Like there was a good video from I forgot the guys from how do you say um, where they try to debunk stuff. But what they did is they have a mega grid of paint. And
Yeah.
instead of paint with a brush. They use this mega grid cannon, and they shot all the paint at the same time. And it's kind of, oh, that's the concept of the principle behind shaders. Like, you don't go linearly one at a line, like shoot everything at once, which is why the GPU handles it so well. I'll put the link in the in I'll give you the link after because I need to find it. But that was, I think, a very nice analogy and an impressive one because you see
Right.
paint cannon that is simultaneously shooting everything at once. So
That's a really cool analogy. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna borrow that from you. Uh,
um, I
yeah.
have to run, unfortunately.
Okay.
I
Then
suggest we put hands in the code in TSL or GSLS if you want another time and record it because I think it's a valuable inquiry.
yeah, very good. And one remark. In the next video call, I will tell something about Forgeo because they now released a feature called Pages. It's an extra binary which allows you
Hmm.
to have. It's basically GitHub Pages, but it's really like 10 times faster. So the moment you do a Git push, it
Hmm.
immediately becomes an open directory. So
Nice.
you can still do some processing later, but it's so
Yeah.
fast. It's really sort of like teleporting us back to, let's say, Apache Open Directory kind of
Uh-huh.
paradigm, which is super fast and so it feels so great to have like this kind of hosting back.
Yeah, and I would be interested in it because, for example, I tend to have a lot of branches, like dozens and dozens, and I want to keep them ideally over time so that one can go jump from one prototype to another without breaking it, without breaking all the version. And if, of course, each branch can have its own published directory and then people can freely navigate, I think it would be really cool. I do it manually now with a script and it's not very reliable. So that could be a good way to do it, better way.
Yeah, so whoever is watching, check out the next video.
Nice.
All right, then have a nice time, have a nice weekend, and yeah, hope to talk to you soon.
Super. Have a lovely weekend. Talk to you soon.
All
Bye
right,
bye.
bye bye. Cheers.